Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Jeff.
I'm Chris.
And we are your Prepared Neighbors. Welcome to the Prepared Neighbors podcast. And today we're doing episode 2, and we're going to be talking about the foundations of preparedness. You know, Chris brought this up the other day. We were talking about this, and it's probably one of the more important items and concepts in preparedness. And the single most important prep is going to be you. It is all about your well-being, your mental health. It's just such a critical component to everything that you do. I mean, at its core, if you aren't healthy, you can't take care of yourself. If you can't take care of yourself, you are of no benefit and no value to anybody else. Now, this is a subject that we are absolutely going to try to bring some experts in over the next couple of years, multiple times, because it's so important that it's one of those things where you don't just talk about it once and never discuss it again. We're going to be bringing this up over and over again because it is so critically important to be taken care of, number one. Now, as we discuss things today, there are a lot of subjects that we're going to just very lightly touch on. You're going to say, Jeff, what happened, man? You were talking about all these things and you didn't really cover them. Remember, we're still focusing at a very foundational level right now. We're still focusing at a very foundational level at what we're trying to do. And we are absolutely going to dive into everything we discuss in great detail, as the time goes by. Now, that being said here, one thing that I think is critically important, though, in establishing a foundation for your preparedness, at some point, you're going to have to decide on a course of action. And that course of action, step one, right? The number one thing you got to do is figure out what you're going to hope to gain from a preparedness strategy, right? So, people tell you like, well, I'm prepping for this, or I'm prepping for that, or here are my preps. Well, all of those things are great to hear about and to talk about, but you don't have any context to go with that. When you create a preparedness strategy for anything, the number one thing that I think it's going to do is it's going to help to reduce stress. And as stress is reduced, it now frees your mind up for other productive activities. It's going to increase the likelihood of you and your team and your family surviving a really tough situation. And when that time is freed up, it now allows you to tackle high priority tasks. So as an example, if you've got food, water, shelter, some of the basics of life, and you're cut off from your community, you have a power outage, you have the roads that lead to your home and to the grocery store are disrupted. If you've already taken some of those basics into consideration, you can focus on, okay, maybe I need to figure out where my generator is, or how to help a neighbor, or how to help an elderly person who's nearby. You can now do that because you're not worried about where you're getting your water from. Now, these are just a couple of quick examples, but figuring out your priorities. So, Chris, if you would, man, let us know what your top priorities are. What are the things that are top of mind for you?
Jeff, you mentioned priorities. You've got your priorities. I've got mine. My priority always is going to be my family. And I think in these types of situations, we can't ignore quality of life. What is going to keep things kind of on an even keel? And it's not absolutely critical, but I think, in fact, I just picked up one of these Anchor Solix power bank things. If it's hot out, man, if we could have a little bit of a breeze, fine. Well, now I can plug a fan into this thing. Oh, sun's going down. It's getting dark. Well, this thing has a light on it, and it can power other lights. So I think getting through difficult times, whether it's a power outage from a storm, a hurricane, whatever, the closer that we can try to get back to normal living really, really hits home for the mindset and everybody just staying on an even keel. It's a lot easier to get through these things. And, we face it, we're used to certain comfort of life.
So that's an important thing to talk about and to differentiate and understand. So how one person defines quality of life is going to be vastly different from how somebody else defines it. And I think that it's not just a matter of the things that you have. Like I have this item or I have that item, and this is something that I use to support my preparedness strategy and goals. But thinking about it from like a morale standpoint.
Yeah. Because again, that goes into your mindset. And I think the closer that we can stay to whatever sense of normalcy we can, that's going to get us through with much greater grace and ease.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I'm just trying to think, because you think about like when people talk about putting kits together and various things they want to have, you always have someone say, oh yeah, like throw a deck of cards in there or some dominoes, right?
Yeah. And I think one of the other keys is, rather than put undue stress on yourself and on your wallet, what do you already have? What can you just throw in a duffel bag or whatever, like a deck of cards, games, something to take your mind off the seriousness of the situation.
Yeah, but bringing it back on the quality of life kind of component of this. So, we talked about air conditioning or some fans or something like that, but you mentioned light. So being able to have light, I mean, think about that. The sun goes down. It doesn't matter what time of year it is. When the sun goes down, the pretty much only thing you can do is go to bed. And if things are really challenging, you're in a situation that, so I've been through a hurricane. I've lived through a hurricane, and we'll definitely talk about that when we get to the hurricane section here, or the hurricane episode. But just because it's dark doesn't mean that you get to shut down and go to bed for the night and call it a day. A lot of times, I can speak specifically back to military times, when it gets dark, That's when we go to work, right? That's when things start to happen. So being able to have, to me, light is not only a quality of life thing. It's not only a morale thing. It is a getting things done and functioning task. And you might be out doing things. Let's say that whatever the disaster or the emergency or the situation might be, let's say that situation or scenario has you outside and you're working in a garden all day long, or it's just, for whatever reason, we've been disconnected from life and you're just doing things. You're not under a direct threat by any kind of enemy or adversary or anything like that. You're just working all day. Well, now you come inside at the end of that day and you've got things you got to do to prepare for the next day. If you don't have that light, you're going to have a heck of a time getting those things done. So that ties into all of it as far as how you're able to continue functioning. Do you want to go outside and do things by campfire, or do you want to do them, from a drop light, maybe inside your home?
But also, just having light, as simple as it is, can be an enormous stress reducer, because what are you going to do if you just had something and it's like, well, where did I put it? It's dark. You can't see. And so to be able to find something, whether it's a can opener to open a can of cat food or dog food, whatever you need, that can be very, very frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that actually leads kind of into the next thing that we were going to cover, and talking about budget. The amount of budget that you have can be a big driver or a big, constraining, aspect of your strategy. And, like a candle is a great way to provide you with some light, maybe even potentially in a really small space, a tiny bit of heat. But yeah, money and budget's always going to be a big component.
And I believe starting with what you already have, rather than having to run out to the camping store and buy all this gear. One of the things I was really surprised, I don't know if I would totally go in on this because I might want to eat them, but if you need to start a fire, I heard that Doritos are a great fire starter.
That's a new one. I have not heard that before.
I mean, you might have to fight somebody for the bag of Doritos, but it's a question of, do you want to have some light and some fire, or do you want to, sit there and snack on some Doritos?
So
well, maybe you can do both.
Yeah, what we're going to have to do is, as we broaden out the podcast and we start doing more on YouTube and start putting videos and things together, we're going to add this as number one thing on our list of things to test out for our listeners and for all of you. The Dorito fire test. We're going to have to do that. Now, speaking about Dorito fire, and I hate to derail anything.
Those are spicy Doritos.
So I love the Tapatio Doritos, and they had them in our area for a brief period of time, and I was eating them and loving them. They got rid of them. I reached out to, I think it's like, I don't know who it is, like Frito-Lay or whoever the distributor is or manufacturer. I can only get them now out west. So like literally I flew to last year to pick up my daughter out in Colorado. She's doing some work with forestry out there. I fly out there, she picks me up, we go to Safeway, and I buy like 4 bags of Tapatio Doritos to bring back with me. That's my fun Dorito story. But now it is now an official prep item, apparently, for emergency and disaster fire starting. So that's great. But, so we're talking about money, it's not always feasible to just go out and get whatever you want. And I think when Chris and I were talking about this earlier, he mentioned like, hey, you don't want to try and do it all in one day. And I think that is really easy when you start getting pumped up and excited about developing a preparedness strategy and a plan. You want to go out and do everything all at one time. And one, it's going to be really tough on your budget. Even if you have a lot of money, it's really easy to start buying a lot of things that you don't necessarily need. So take your time and leverage all the resources that are out there. You can find some amazing deals at like Goodwill, Salvation Army, any of your local thrift shops. You can get some really, really great prepping type items at, like 90% off. And, you can certainly leverage things like Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist, and yard sales are great. You go to a yard sale, you can always find things that, even if they're not necessarily a direct prep to support you, it might be a great thing that you can give to a friend or a neighbor or someone who has interest in that area. So for example, I've got a buddy of mine who's really big into reloading. I have a reloader. I just really don't reload ammo. I don't have the time, energy, the space, all that stuff. But whenever I find dies or any, loading components that I know are useful at a yard sale, I pick them up and I hand them to him. I'm like, here you go, man. And it's cool because I know when I need ammo in a pinch, I can go to this guy. He's going to help me out. And I paid like $2 for some $30 or $40 dies. Things like that are just, it's like low hanging fruit for preparedness. Really, really easy to get a good deal. So another item that I think is going to be considered something that should be at the foundation of your preparedness is determining what problems or issues that you want to solve. Now, a lot of times, especially with a lot of guys, they want to be big and tough and everything is, shoot, move, and communicate. And I think if you have that mindset for a lot of preparedness, you're going to be setting yourself up for failure. And then kind of conversely to that, there are a lot of ladies who think, oh, I'm just a gal. Like, what am I going to do for preparedness stuff? Like, where do I fit into this whole strategy? So ladies, please do not think that you don't have a place here. Ladies are community builders. We've seen this throughout history. We all have a role to play. And, sometimes we have to play both of those roles, but you ladies out there absolutely should be a part of this. We need your leadership in the areas where us guys just aren't as strong. I mean, women are much better with attention to detail, and they're absolutely critical, in my opinion, in preparedness. I mean, I can say that I have these voices and very strong memories of these voices in my mind. There's 5 female voices that are just permanently locked into my mind. That's my mother, my grandmother, my aunt, and another aunt. 2 of my aunts. One of them is biological. One of them is through marriage. All 4 of those women are deceased. They're no longer with us, but their memory of their voices in my mind is so soothing. Now, number 5 on that list is my godmother up in New Jersey. So I hope that she's doing well and the whole family up there is doing great. My god family and my god sisters. But that soothing voice of just the warmth, the love, the compassion, it just helps to instill a certain confidence in you. And we have to have that. You don't have to carry a rifle or plow a field to have a positive impact in your preparedness community.
My wife is absolutely critical. She's a rock star. I mean, number one, she puts up with me. God love her. She's just an amazing mother. She's an amazing wife. And she runs a tight ship. I'm big ideas and, hey, let's do this. But man, when it comes down to, you mentioned the attention to detail, she knows what the prescriptions are. She knows which dog gets which medicine. She knows which child gets what medicine. She's got the routines down. There's an incredible skill set, multiple skill sets that she has that bewilder me. I have no idea how she does it. And so I would most assuredly lean into her support. I would have to in that type of a situation. And I think the more people we have on our team, the better off we are. Because there's no way that any one person can do all this stuff.
Well, I can tell you right now, I think that she definitely can give a few clinics in a couple of different areas. But one thing that I absolutely love is I was over at Chris's house the other day, and this is actually the second time. The first time I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. The second time I was looking forward to it. But they've got this big indoor lettuce tower that I absolutely love. I walked in and I was like, hey, what do you got going on over here? And she walks through the whole thing and explains everything to me. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I've got to have one of these at my house because it's not just super cool that you're growing, lettuce and other things right there in the living
In your
room.
living room.
Yeah, well, I think it was just like kind of like in the like kitchen breakfast nook kind of area, but it was obviously super fresh vegetables and all this is really cool. But it's also like that trickling water sound, like you're having like that soothing sound of water. So yeah, his wife is a super cool gal, and I always enjoy the. And in fact, this time it didn't happen, but the previous time she sent me home with a whole bunch of lettuce, which fed the family lettuce, for like about a week. So that was pretty cool.
I'll have to have a word with her. But the reason that, and so here's an interesting thing. My interest in getting prepared are really, really focused on gear and skills and all this stuff. My wife has this really, really great group of friends. And these ladies get together, they play cards, and they share common interests. One of them had this grow tower, and we don't have a lot of sun in our backyard. We've got quite a few trees back there, so it's kind of hard for us to grow. And that was the solution. And so they shared ideas, and she said, okay, this is the one that I got. This is how you do it. I helped put it together. And then her friend came over and said, okay, this is how you get the pH balance and all that stuff. So there was a lot of collaboration there. And now we've got more lettuce than we could possibly eat. Not parsley. What's the other one?
Basil.
Yeah, basil. And there's some other stuff. It's all green. We try to eat healthy. And so with all the processed food out there and all that stuff, man, we try to stay away from that. And just in the general spirit of being self-reliant, this goes a long way.
Yes, and that's a great example of how much stronger we are working together and building those relationships.
And this was all her.
Yeah.
I had nothing to do with it.
Well, and building those relationships in the community, right? So this is, you obviously have her as your teammate in preparedness.
God.
But she's your teammate in preparedness, and now she's extending the team by reaching out to others, bringing them in. And now that it's a tiered kind of a system, right? Everybody supports everyone else, and it's really cool. So that leads us into the preparedness tip of the day. So Chris, what do you have for us today?
Something really, really basic. And that is, we learned it as kids. As parents, I used to tell my kids this, but I never really understood the science behind it and why it was so effective. And that is, take a deep breath. It does a couple of things. Number one, you can't shoot your mouth off and say something stupid if you're taking a nice deep breath. So that's pretty important. But in a stressful situation, if you oxygenate your brain just by taking a deep breath, you're far more likely to lower your emotional state, bring it back down to a state of calmness. And as a result, you can make far better decisions. And in times of stress, that's absolutely critical. Taking 2 or 3 deep breaths, it sounds really stupid maybe, but man, is it practical. Just take a nice deep breath, let it out, take a couple more. And then as Jeff said off camera, he said, yeah, you might want to remind him, just keep doing that throughout the day.
You're going to want to stick with that. Yeah, once you
breathing.
Start, you just kind of stick with it. Absolutely. So we're going to move on into a couple of more kind of, again, foundational items. And remember, one, like I said before, we're going to cover these in much greater detail later, but these are things that apply to everyone, regardless of age, race, location. These are a few kind of tips here that everybody needs to be thinking about for all situations and locations. So organizing and collecting important documents. So driver's license, passport, any documentation of anything that you might need to have that would allow you to travel freely locally or anywhere else you may need to go. Having all of those documents ready to go is going to be important. Prescription medications for yourself, for loved ones, if you're doing any kind of senior or elder care, pets. This is a huge component. I've got this cat. I'm not going to go off on a cat tangent right now, but I'm like the lead care provider for an elderly cat right now. And it's a disaster, thyroid issue, whole thing. But anyway, as we progress and we start talking about gear, we're going to be talking about what to bring, what bags for different scenarios. You have what we call a EDC, an everyday carry. Are you bringing that? Are you not? What would be included in that? How much of whatever is enough or not enough, or how much is too much? what gear is the right gear for different scenarios. And it's also important too that as you look at the idea of preparing items to carry with you for various scenarios or various types of situations that would present themselves, is making sure that other people in your group perceive and understand your plan the same way you do. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of this. So I've got, 3 daughters, and I kind of vary things and utilities I provide to them based on them as individuals. So my one daughter, I knew where she was going to be. She was going to be in a remote area for an extended period of time doing some work in forestry. So with her, I just gave her a small Faraday bag with a Garmin InReach 2. If you're not familiar with this, it's a satellite-based, it's a small GPS. You can do some really cool things with it, but the most important thing to me is emergency calls and being able to emergency message from anywhere that has a satellite, visibility to a satellite. So I provided her with this. I knew that's more than enough for her. Now that's a completely different setup from my wife's bag, where she's got 3 different forms of communication, and we'll dive into that in a subsequent episode. But then my other daughter, who is in college, 15, 20 miles away from my house, well, she just has a Faraday bag with a GMRS radio, and that radio is programmed to a repeater that I have at my house, right? So everything is customized for the people who have different needs. In addition to that, it's also making sure that these people understand how to use them, because I have great ideas of what I want my daughters to be prepared to do, but their understanding, the ability to understand is absolutely 100% there. They're very smart people who know how to do things. It's just not necessarily the interest or the drive or the motivation to do so. Now, something bad happens and people are going to learn real quick, but I've tried to put us in a situation where even when something bad happens, they don't have to figure it out. And what I've done is I've printed up, basic step sort of, manuals, not even like a full manual. It's basically like a quick start guide that's inside of these bags. So they can open it up. It's laminated and they can say, okay, step 1, here's where the on button is. Here is where this menu or that menu. And that way they don't have to be experts in it. They can just open the bag, turn it on, and they can start communicating. But again, making sure that other people see your preparedness, the things that you're doing for them, making sure that they understand the why behind it. If people don't understand why they're doing something, getting them motivated to carry this bag around with them everywhere they go, it's just not going to work out too well.
Jeff, you said something in your explanation of the preparedness bags and all that I think is really, really critical, and that is the cheat sheets, the laminated cheat sheets. One of the things that happens when we're under a duress, extreme stress, we begin to shut down. It's very, very difficult for some of us to really think through things that, would be easy to figure out on a normal day. All of a sudden, it's like we just kind of freeze. And so if we make it easy for people to succeed and we give them the tools that they need, you open up the bag or on the back of the radio, there it is. It's got a picture. It's got step 1, step 2, step 3. Again, we're reducing stress and we're allowing people to be successful in that situation. Why? Because we've taken the time beforehand to prepare all this so when we need it, it's there. And that goes back again to be prepared so you don't have to get prepared.
Yeah, and I'll give you another kind of follow-up example. So all of my girls for Christmas a couple years ago, they all got these jump starters with air compressors, little mini air compressors integrated in with them. And I was super happy. I'm like, man, I'm a cool dad. I got these great things for my daughters, and it's going to be really awesome. And then I would go with them somewhere, and I'm like, oh, where's the thing? It's like, oh, I accidentally took it inside. I was cleaning out the car.
Well, did you charge it up? No, I forgot.
Well, that's step 2. So that was one of the girls was, I took it inside when I was cleaning out the car. And then one of them got lost, so I bought them a replacement one. And it was probably arguably my most responsible child who lost one. And I'm like, how do you lose these things? But she was great. She brought it inside all the time. She was charging it. She was maintaining it. But I'll tell you, interesting, my youngest, and she's the one who really pays attention. Like, she's the one I can teach things to. She comes outside. She wants to learn about how to fix things. She actually replaced the heater core in her Jeep. Like we did that together. We tore the dash apart and she was in the whole process. And she had a problem one time. And I'm like, well, where's your jump starter? And she takes it out, didn't know how to hook it up. Now I had showed her once, but I get it. Like
the things we take for granted.
Yeah. So I did not, I felt bad as a father. Like I didn't take enough time. I showed her once, but you got to do it a few times. So we did it a few times and then she didn't have it charged. So it didn't work out the first time we tried to use it. And then what ended up happening is she was having some kind of a problem. I don't know if it was with the shifter in her Jeep or the ignition switch or the key or the fob. There was some kind of a problem somewhere that was causing this intermittent starting issue. Well, she then learned how to jumpstart because she wasn't sure if it was tied to the battery or some kind of connection somehow. But the long story short with this is she had jump-started it so many times with this jump starter. She was a little expert at it. We actually did a YouTube video on another channel where she's doing the whole thing, walking you through how to jumpstart the vehicle. So for her now, that's really important. She keeps it charged. She keeps an eye on it. She knows exactly where it is because she understands how much of a pain it is to be stuck somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Yes, it's exactly something like that booster that you're showing me right there, Chris. And but that's the thing. Like once you learn how important, like I have these just terrible visions. Like as a father, all you want to do is protect your girls, and you want to make sure that they're not stranded. And literally, I did everything I could possibly do, but the lowest common denominator was right there. Like she just didn't really understand the sense of urgency and how important it is to not be stranded somewhere. And so. Again, you got to make sure that everything you're doing, that the recipient and your teammate, the people you're doing this for, you got to make sure that they understand the importance of why you're doing it.
And I think customizing each individual's bag, if we're going to be doing that, we just start from where they are. Okay, this one's really tech savvy. I can hook her up with this, and this. This one over here, yeah, no, So this is what I'm going to make accommodations so that they will be successful with this. This is something that they can handle. And it's not that they're not intelligent enough. We all have different aptitudes, and some people's aptitudes are real tech savvy, others not so much. And so you lean into what their strengths are, and again, to make them successful. One of the things that we always try to do on this podcast is give you some very practical pieces of advice. The booster that Jeff was just mentioning, I got everybody in the family one of these things. I think they're the coolest things, and I think Black Friday's coming up, and they're probably going to be on sale. We're not affiliated. This is just based on my own personal use. I use a NOCO. It's NOCO. It's called a NOCO Boost, and they come in different strengths. It's a very small, compact battery booster. It's got the battery cables attached to it. And what I love about it is, in a cramped space, you don't have to have another vehicle try to go hood to hood or get on which side of the battery is yours on, and I'll try to. None of that. You just pop the hood, and you hook up this battery booster to the positive and negative cables. You push the button, and then you start your vehicle. It works. It really, really works. It's fantastic. It's very simple. It's small. It's self-contained, and it's easy.
It's so funny that you're talking about that.
And I get so excited about this stuff.
When I think back to like the 8. So I got my driver's license. I hate to give this away, but I got my driver's license. I think it was something like, I don't know, like 89 maybe. And I remember like everybody had jumper cables. Everybody had jumper cables. Everybody knew how to jump vehicles.
I still have 2 or 3 sets of them.
I do. I still have them. I still have them in my truck today. I carry jumper cables everywhere I go. But it's just funny to see how, that was the norm. That was the standard. And now we have an option that allows us to be self-sufficient. And this is, again, something that we are going to preach forever. It is incredibly important for you to be self-sufficient. Yes, you have a team and you're building a team and you're creating a team, and that is going to make you even stronger, but you still have to do everything you can to be self-sufficient. And, to circle back on what Chris was saying about preparing these bags for everyone and setting somebody else up for gear, you have to know the person you're setting it up for. That part of it is really important. I can create a generic bag and say, hey, this is probably going to be pretty good for you. And I have friends and people I know who would be like, okay, cool, thanks. But 2 pieces to that. One, you can give some people, like I can tell you, everybody who's a parent knows you have multiple kids, your kids are completely different. I know that there are, one of my girls, I can just say, hey, here's a bag. It's got a bunch of stuff. And she'd say, cool, thanks. And she would be grateful to have it and would use whatever she could. But I know that like my others would probably want to be involved. And if I say, hey, listen, I'm going to put together this bag for some emergency stuff, like what kinds of things do you think you would need to have? Or when they are involved in it, especially if you're dealing with a younger person, maybe you have like a 16, 17-year-old, son or daughter, and they're just learning to drive and they're just getting out in the world a little bit. They're thinking about college down the road, getting them involved and like, hey, what do you think you might need to have?
Gives them some ownership.
Well, it's ownership, and it's also a chance to keep the gears turning. Like, hey, you're on the side of the road. You have a flat tire. What kinds of things do you think you're going to need? And having them talk through what that emergency scenario and those emergency items, might look like. So I think it's always a plus whenever you get the recipient of your goodwill and your good intentions involved in whatever you're trying to do.
And as a dad, one of the most helpless feelings is not being there. Oof. And so, as I put together a bag, especially for my daughter, I'm going to think of what's something totally out of place that I could put in that bag that would make her smile. Whether it's a duck, just something totally, it could be an inside joke. So when they pull that out, they just, boom, a moment of relief right there. Again, that goes back to resetting that mindset.
Yeah. So, folks, as you can see, right, we touched on a lot of different topics that are subtopics, but the core of what we're getting at today is the foundation. So determining what are those foundational items for you? What are the things that you are going to build your personal or your community or your family or your streets? What is going to be that foundation for your group and your scenario? And I think that, if you can, as a component of that, determining what your preparedness priorities are going to be. And you don't have to have a certain set. It's not like, well, these are my 3 priorities and these are the only ones I can ever have and that's it. You might have 3, Chris might have 10, I might have 20.
It's going to change and develop as you go on.
Absolutely. It's a living, breathing thing. Your preparedness strategy is a living, breathing thing, and it's going to be different because you're going to have multiple strategies. My family strategy is different from my neighborhood strategy, is different from I have friends who are in different geographical areas. One of them is in Central Virginia. One of them is in South Carolina. These guys are part of my extended strategy. If something really bad happens here and a hurricane comes through and I can't have a home, I don't have a home anymore, I have an extended strategy that takes me to different parts. One of them is north and west, and one of them is south and west. So I have to have different and varying foundational strategies and priorities depending on the scenario and what's going on. So hopefully this gives you a few things to think about. If you'd like to catch up with Chris and I, or you have something to share, you want to suggest a show topic, or just reach out and say hi, hit us up at info@preparedneighborspodcast.com. And remember, as always, don't be scared.
Be prepared.
We'll see you next time.